All right, so we are recording. We are live. And so if you're watching this later on, just follow along with the discussion that occurs here, and we should be talking about things and answering questions that can help you with your assignment today, as well as the midterm later this week. So I've seen some questions posted down here below by the participants who are here currently. The first one that I want to address is actually Amanda's question, just because I think it's really important to clear up any confusion around what assignments we need to be doing. Amanda, you're not the only person to ask a question like this, but my answer for you is that you need to be really ensuring that you are following the activity and assignment guide that I posted, because you do not actually need to do assignment 3 or sorry, you do not need to do the assignment that you are speaking about. So I'm just taking a look here. It says I have a question for the assignment for activity 3. So let me just do a screen share, Amanda, and hopefully this will clear things up. So I'm just going to open up the activity and assignment guide that we have been using throughout this course ever since pretty much the second day of the class, which is really like the first day we started working on stuff. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, there we go. Can you guys see the activity and assignment guide? Should be up on the screen now. Okay, so I'm just going to go through this. If you already are, pretty familiar with this, no worries. That's cool, but we should be, taking a look at it again just to ensure we're on the same page. Actually, I'm going to pull up a different version of this because it looks like this is the old one, and I really want to make sure that nobody is confused at all as to what's going on here. Here we go. Okay, so let's close all the things that we don't need, and let's make sure this takes up the screen. There we are. So this is the revised activity and assignment guide. Only one revision has been made since it's been posted, and it was not really that much of a major revision. It was just a date switch. I'm not going to speak too much about that because I talked at length about that in the classroom news post that had to do with that. So you'll notice here it says activities that are listed but do not have an assessment attached are still expected to be part of your self-directed learning in the course. You can think about these like lessons in regular school where there is no test or assignment for the day. An example of that would have been, let's actually use a recent activity. So just yesterday on July 10th, I asked you actually to go through activity 1 and activity 8, but there are no assessments, no assignments posted outside of one formative assessment for activity 8. So you didn't need to do any other activities. The only activities you should have been dealing with were activity 1 and activity 8 in unit 4. And you should not have been completing any assignments for activity 1 because there's no assignment posted in submit for assessment, and you could have chosen to submit a formative assessment for activity 8 assignment 4. You'll notice up here there's a note about that. That's why it's really important to read the instructions, right? I'm looking now, Amanda, you're rephrasing here. You said I didn't mean assignment 3, I meant activity 4 act 3. What does freedom look like? There's several small assignments within that, and I'm asking about. So again, okay, good. So let's continue with this. Still the same problem we're dealing with here. Because if you take a look, you're still, Amanda, and again, you're not the only person to have made this mistake. You're still assuming that you need to actually do assignment 3, right? If you're talking, okay, now I'm with you, because now I'm seeing where the confusion's coming from. You're talking about in the future, right? Let me just get this straight. You're talking about for July 14th? I'm just waiting for your answer because I really want to make sure. Okay, so today's assignment, the only assignment that is due today, I'm highlighting on the screen, is activity 4, assignment 4. That's it. You shouldn't be dealing with assignment 3. But if you're dealing with activities, yeah, so let's just, okay, perfect. I'm sorry for the confusion on my end, but I just really want to make sure we're all clear. So, Amanda, you are not alone. A number of people have made this mistake. You really need to be making sure that you are looking at which activity is assigned and which assignment is attached to that activity. Where I just got confused was that Amanda was asking about assignment 3. You are going to be responsible for unassignment 3, but it is not assignment 3 that is part of activity 4. It is assignment 3 that is part of activity 6, right? So you really need to make sure that you are looking at both of those things. You can think about it like, kind of a chain. The first thing you need to, in terms of organizing yourself, the first thing you need to look at is the unit. So looking ahead, for example, unit 5, right? Then activity 2, for example, and assignment 1. So when you are looking for what to complete in this course, that's how you want to be doing this. You want to go to the unit, then you want to find the activity, and then you want to find the assignment. Okay? So let's make sure that we are not doing stuff that I am not asking you to do, because you are going to get frustrated if you do that, and it is probably going to affect the quality of the work that I am asking you to do. So now that we have that out of the way, that was important to clarify. And again, I cannot reiterate this enough. That was not solely something that Amanda was having an issue with. That is something that many people actually emailed me about over the weekend. So let's just switch back now to our discussion view. Okay, so moving along, let's take a look at some of the questions that are posted here. I think at least one was about the assignment today and one was about the midterm. So I'd like to deal with the questions that have to do with the assignment today first. So I'm just scrolling through here, and it looks like we have a question about the midterm from Samantha. And then, okay, maybe we don't have anything about the assignment today, just stuff from the midterm. So we'll talk about that, but then I am going to be talking about the assignment today a bit. Just in brief, and that hopefully can give you some guidance on maybe how to proceed if you haven't yet started, which I hope you've given it some thought. But certainly, even if you have started, it will help to clarify your thinking. Okay, so regarding the midterm, let's just pull up the midterm questions, because that's what we're talking about here. Samantha asked for clarification around this question, the first question here. I'm going to zoom in on it. Okay, a doll's house, and oh, sorry, it's on my screen, not on yours. Let's share my screen again. So here we have the first option. Remember, you have an option of 2 questions to work with on your midterm exam. You do not need to do both of them. Please, as you prepare, only pick one and work towards answering that one question. So a lot of people probably are going to choose this question, although I really do want to encourage people to work with question 2 as well. It's just as valid of a question, and I think you might end up having, in some ways, a fresher take because you haven't worked with this story as much. So don't just ignore this because we've recently been reading A Doll's House. You might want to go back and examine the theme of freedom in The Strangers That Came to Town. There might be some really great stuff for you to write about there. But the question we have now is about this first question, A Doll's House. Decide which are the most major moments of recognition and reversal from A Doll's House. What does Nora recognize, and how is her situation at the end of the play reversed from the beginning? Show how the action leads up to this moment, or these separate moments if they are not the same, and explain why the denouement is then inevitable. Use specific quotes from or references to the play and other course material to support your arguments. 2 to 3 pieces of evidence, i.e. quotes/references, are expected per body paragraph. So unpacking this question, and I mean, if you'd looked in the instructions above, you would know that you have to write an essay in response to either one of these questions. We're expecting a standard, kind of a standard high school essay, which would be 5 paragraphs, introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. within, this actually answers your question, John. Within each paragraph, I am expecting at least 2 to 3 pieces of evidence. I would encourage you to find 3. If you can only put 2 together, work with 2, but you certainly do not want less than that. And those pieces of evidence can absolutely come in the form of quotes from the play. I think a lot of them will, although I did not want to limit you to only quoting the play. You could actually potentially use outside evidence, quotes and references to other texts that we have studied in order to help bolster or support your argument. So for example, if you were discussing, I'm just going to kind of use the example down here, right? Number 2, let's say you started talking about or writing about freedom as it's represented in The Strangers That Came to Town. Maybe you make a point about the way that freedom is represented that actually connects to your understanding of how Langston Hughes presents emancipation, which is kind of another word for freedom, in his poem Oppression. And so maybe you want to bring in a reference to that poem in your essay that you write to answer this midterm question. You can do that. And remember, again, if you've read the instructions up top, you'll notice that you are allowed to bring in 1 page, single-sided, of quotes/references from the text we've studied. So you don't need, I'm not asking you to memorize these quotes and references. I'm asking you to get them down, decide in advance which ones you want to use, bring them in. They're like your tools that you're going to put to use when you write your essay. Okay? I noticed there's a question down here, or a comment, let me just pop in here. It says, can we type the quotes/references for the reference page? Absolutely, Samantha, you absolutely can do that. You may type them. Can be written, can be typed. It's up to you. Okay? So going back to Samantha's question, because in beginning to answer it, I answered John's, right? So yes, you absolutely are talking about quotes here from the play, but you're also talking about quotes or references to other texts we've studied. And what I mean by references is paraphrases, right? So let's say you don't want to quote something, but you want to refer to something or an idea that was present in another text or even in a Doll's House, but you don't want to actually directly quote something. That's what I'm considering a reference, right? So you still would want to cite that because it's not your own idea. It didn't come from your brain. Okay, so Samantha asked about this phrasing, recognition and reversal. And she's not the first person to have asked about this. I got some emails about this as well. So hopefully people are taking the time to watch this. This is where that answer is going to be. If you email me about it, I'm going to tell you to come right here and watch this recording. So what we're talking about here is nothing too complex. Really, we're just using the words as they're written here. In A Doll's House, if you think about the play and the action that occurs in the play, the plot, there is a moment, a major moment, at least one. You could potentially argue more than one, but really you could just deal with one in the play if you wanted to, where a character, and here we're giving you a hint, we're kind of saying Nora in specific, recognizes something dramatic, something important, something significant about her own life and the way her life is being led and what the constructs of her life are, what constrains her and what's holding her back. And then there's a moment of reversal that's attached to that, where things change, right? When things are reversed, it means things go in the opposite direction. So how is her situation at the end of the play reversed from the beginning? What's different at the end of the play than what existed when the play started, specifically for this character, right? What we're asking you to do is to examine what leads up, like what is this moment? What happens? What is this epiphany for Nora? And then to examine kind of what contributes to that. What leads up to it? What factors into it? Here we're saying explain why the denouement is inevitable. The denouement is that term we use in storytelling for what happens after the climax of the story, right? So we're asking you to explain why is whatever happens after this moment of recognition and reversal, this climactic moment, why is that inevitable? Why would it be that it's impossible for the action to unfold in any other way. It's a bit of a trickier question, in my opinion, than this one. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but I'm being honest. If I'm writing an essay for this exam, maybe I'm going to do question number 2. I still think I could write a really good one for question number 1, but it's a little bit trickier. It requires me to think in a bit of a different way. Why is it that we would include a question that's a little bit trickier for A Doll's House? Well, because you've already worked with this text at this point. You already, at this point, will have written about this play today for this assignment, and you'll be writing about it again later. Whereas we haven't really asked you to write specifically about the strangers that came to town. We've asked you to write your own bullying narrative that kind of connects to the ideas that were in this text, but we have not asked you to write about this text specifically. So in some ways, like I said earlier, this allows you more of a clean slate, a fresher take. Here, we're asking for a little bit more of a challenging analysis and piece of writing because you've already had a chance to write about this. So at this point, you should have a little bit more of a sophisticated understanding of this text. Okay. It's hard for me in some ways to completely unpack this question because I don't want to give too much away. There's no one right answer, but I don't want to give you guys an answer to work with, right? I want you to come up with that for yourself. So again, I'm going to kind of repeat myself here, but to clarify, this question about A Doll's House is really about identifying a major moment, or potentially more than one, where a character in this play, and we are hinting here that at the very least, Nora would be such a character. Potentially you could write about more than Nora, but for sure Nora applies to this question that we're phrasing here. Look for a moment where a character makes a major realization, major recognition. You could almost replace that word recognition with realization. An epiphany is the best way to put it. Let me just bring this up real quick so that we have an idea because we're still screen sharing. Epiphany, that's not the actual definition that I want because that's the religious definition. So maybe we'll use Merriam-Webster because I know that they're going to give us the definition we're looking for. Here we go. So, a usually sudden manifestation or perception of the essential nature or meaning of something, an intuitive grasp of reality through something, such an event that is simple and striking, an illuminating discovery, realization, or disclosure, right? The idea is that Nora, at the very least, in this play, has a moment that matches up with this word, certainly with this definition of it, right? She has a moment where she comes to a great realization. She recognizes something. It's a moment of recognition. She recognizes something extremely important and insightful about her life and how she's been living her life and how her life has been created for her. And then from there, things reverse. There's a moment of reversal, right? Things begin to move in the opposite direction than they had before. So at this point, I'm going to shut my mouth because I've been talking quite a bit, and I just want to check in with the people who are here who are listening. Does that help clarify what this question's about? Question number 1 for the midterm. Anybody, throw your answer down below. Wonderful. Excellent. So that's what we are talking about with that question. Excellent. Good, good, good. Very glad to see that. Everyone seems to be on the same page. Okay. The other question, again, is a little bit more open, right? The strangers that came to town. It has been said that Ambrose Flack's short story is primarily a tale about freedom. Some others argue that it is primarily focused on showing that true freedom is about being accepted. Use characterization, so the characters and how they're written, plot, the story and how that moves forward, and setting to prove the claim that this is primarily a story about freedom and acceptance. Alternatively, so we actually give you some options here. So you could you could work off of that and come up with a thesis regarding the story being about freedom and acceptance. here's another question. It's almost like two questions in one. It's almost like you have one option here for A Doll's House, and then we give you almost two options for The Strangers That Came to Town. So alternatively, you might discuss how characterization, plot, and setting all work together to underscore the theme of freedom in Flack's story. Right? It's similar, but not identical. But essentially, we're asking you to use the various elements of short stories and stories in general, character, plot, setting. We're not asking you to use all the elements, but these are the three we're looking at here. If you'd like to use different elements of stories that aren't found here, so for example, like the point of view of the narrator, or potentially the language that's used, you just let me know that that's something you'd like to do, and I'm sure that we can figure that out. But as it stands, you're being asked to use character, plot, and setting to underscore, to explain the theme of freedom in Flack's story. Okay, that sets it up nicely if you're writing a 5-paragraph essay, because you need 3 body paragraphs, which essentially are 3 main arguments that support your thesis. And whatever thesis you come up with about how freedom is defined or represented or characterized inside of this short story, you have automatically right here set for you 3 kind of body paragraph topics, areas of focus. You can look at character, you can look at plot, and then you can look at setting, right? So in essence, your essay main arguments are half of, like, kind of the subject of those main arguments is already decided for you. So some of the work is already done for you. So this one might appeal to some of you guys for that reason. Okay. Just a quick check-in. Does that question make sense to the people who are here? I'm using you guys as my litmus test. Okay. Great. I'm seeing yeses. Yes, yes, yes. That's good. All right. So at this point, do we have any other questions, people who are here, about the midterm exam that is coming up on this Thursday? I'm just going to wait for your questions, see if we have any. I'll switch my screen back. Vanessa, welcome. I didn't notice you in here because you came a little bit later. If you have any questions, obviously throw them in there. Good question, Amanda. So again, you're not the first person to ask that question. So Amanda asks, quick question about citing A Doll's House. I used the online version, which didn't have page numbers, so how would I cite the quotes? Great question. So first, really important to note, and some of you guys know this already from your Shakespeare stuff, when we are citing a play, do we cite page numbers? People who are here, this is like our one moment of kind of back and forth teaching. It rarely happens in an e-learning context. Somebody tell me, when we're citing a play, I'm kind of leading you right to an answer. Obviously, it looks like the answer is no, we don't cite page numbers. So what do we typically cite when we're citing a play? Anybody know who's here from Shakespeare? Remember writing your Shakespeare essays? What do you cite? You don't write page 92. What do you write? You got it. Act, scene, line. Amanda, you're all over it. You knew the answer to your own question. So you normally would cite the act, the scene, and the line, right? Act 2, scene 4, line 10 to 14. But Amanda's question is still very valid, because if you are reading the online version, at least the online version with the link that's supplied through the class content on Desire to Learn, there are no line numbers. And also this play, you will notice, has no scenes. It's a 3-act play, which is very common in plays. And each act is continuous. That's because the action all takes place pretty much, for the most part, in the same spots. There's very little transitioning in terms of setting. So what you will be quoting, what you will be citing, I should say, is just the act. If you worked with an online version that had no line numbers, just use the ACT. If you used a hard copy and there were no line numbers as well, so you were reading like a paper version of the play and there were no line numbers, also just use the ACT. Okay. Um, John, are you talking about the piece of writing that's due today? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be an essay. Okay, I just want to clarify that, right? Remember, I meant what I said when I wrote a series of paragraphs. It could be, you could write 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, but whatever it looks like, the piece of writing that is due today is due at 11:59. Always, 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 assignments are due at 11:59 p.m. of that day. That's it. So technically during the day. Okay? Great. Okay. That works, Samantha. That's okay. But did it have, sorry, I should clarify that. You want to cite, you don't, because we're working with a play, you don't want to cite pages, right? Really ever. So the other link that you were using, I don't know which one you're referring to, but did it include line numbers? So then what you should be doing is using the ACT as well. Because the page isn't going to help. The whole idea is that when you are citing a play, yes, the play might end up having certain lines on certain pages, on different pages, depending on who the publisher was, but we should always be able to find what you're looking for no matter the version. Okay? So you would want to use the ACT. In your case, what I would do, the whole idea behind citing stuff is to make it as clear as possible for the reader where to find it, right? So I wouldn't get rid of your page numbers. That's okay, but I would definitely include the ACT as well. So what I would have, Samantha, is it would look like this in my bracket. I'm just making an example. Does that make sense? Works? Okay. Vanessa, you're asking, do you need a reference page, a works cited? Always. So you'll notice that, let me just take a quick peek here. I'm gonna go over to the assignment. It should be in the instructions, but even if it's not, as I stated, as one of the class news posts stated early in the course, any piece of writing that you are producing in a university course context, English context, as if it is not explicitly stated that you shouldn't be using MLA formatting, then you absolutely should be. So in this situation, you have to assume that you're writing from an MLA standpoint, which means you need a works cited page. And I just want to double check. Let's take a look here and see. I'm just going to screen share for a second. So yeah, so just so you don't have to worry about asking a question like that in the future or for anybody else, whenever you see this, you can say to yourself, okay, this guy's asking me for MLA format for my quotes. That automatically means I need to have a works cited page, because MLA quotation demands that you use internal citation. Sometimes it's called embedded referencing. And you cannot appropriately or successfully cite things in that manner if you do not have a works cited page to refer to. They work together, right? They work in conjunction. So I end up creating my parenthetical citation after my quote, right? That's the citation that goes inside of the parentheses, sometimes called brackets. And that has to refer to a reference that's in my works cited page down below. And in terms of how you create your works cited page and how you write your references and inside of the paper, so your internal citations and all that, you really should be reviewing if you don't remember how to do this. So for example, if I go to the OWL Purdue website, which I talked about before, you'll notice that I'm able to select from a number of articles that will help me to do this properly, right? So in-text citations, the basics. This actually looks like APA, my bad. We want to go to MLA. Here we go. Same idea though. So research and citation, MLA style, MLA formatting and style guide. Here we go. MLA works cited, in-text citations, and then we would want to have our works cited page. So these are two links you can look at, but really all the links that are in here really help you to do this MLA stuff properly. Right here, creating a works cited list. What are you supposed to do, right? Tells you what to do. So make sure that you are using this resource. I will post it again in our class news. It's already been posted, but I will post it one more time just so it's there right at the top for you to use, okay? Any other questions at this point? Other questions from you guys? Anybody got one? I'll wait a minute or like 30 seconds. At that point, I'm just going to talk briefly about the assignment today. So while I'm pulling that up, you guys think if you have any other questions while I'm pulling up today's assignment. Okay, looks like nobody else has something for right now. So I'm going to screen share one more time. Give me one sec here. Just pulling up a couple things here, guys, that can help us to think about the assignment today. Okay. So I actually was just pulling up some images because I find that images can often help us to think our way creatively through ideas. And so now I'm just going to do a quick screen share with you guys. Regarding today's assignment. Just closing the things we don't need. Okay, so today's assignment. Having had a chance to share ideas concerning the theme of freedom in Ibsen's play, you now have an opportunity to respond in writing. In a well-written series of persuasive paragraphs, no less than one, no more than 5, and I would encourage you to work with in more than one. I don't think you're really going to be able to get across your ideas in just one. Discuss the theme of freedom as it is explored in A Doll's House. Please use 2 to 6 references from the play to support your ideas. The reason I say use 2 to 6 is because I'm thinking, again, if you have 3 body paragraphs, let's say you do end up writing this 5-paragraph piece of writing, so really you end up having an essay, you might want to have an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, a conclusion. I'm really looking for you to have 2 examples per paragraph, 2 pieces of evidence. If you want to go above that, you can, but I'm not looking for that. You can get top marks. You can prove your argument. Let's frame it that way. You can persuade me sufficiently by using 6 pieces of evidence. You don't need more. If you feel like you want to use more because it makes you more confident and it makes you feel like it's leading to stronger persuasion, okay, fine. But I don't think you need to use more than 6 in order to persuade me of what you believe, okay? Before you submit your work, ensure you have proofread your work and used your spell checker. That's a big deal. A lot of you guys had some simpler errors that kind of chip away at your reader's confidence. I might have given you that exact piece of feedback for your first piece of writing. Also ensure that you've used proper MLA format for the quotations you've used. You may need to review proper MLA format for citing a quotation in the body of your text. And for creating works cited, we just went over that. I will be posting the OWL Purdue link. If for some reason I forget, somebody email me and I will post it. But you can also just Google it. Literally Google OWL Purdue, Purdue. You will find that website. Okay. So a quick little discussion about this task, right? It's pretty broad. Discuss the theme of freedom, right? Discuss the theme of freedom as it is explored in a doll's house. Well, what am I supposed to write about? You might be thinking, right? I know I have to write about freedom. I got to come up with a thesis, but what exactly am I going to write about? Well, I'm not going to tell you what you're going to write about, but I'm going to tell you that there are definitely some motifs inside of this play that you can be thinking about that will lead you to better understand and explore this theme of freedom. So certainly one thing that comes up in the play in different ways is money, right? Now the play is actually, it's not taking place in Canada or the States. They don't really tell you exactly where it is, but if you did a little background research on the author of the playwright himself, you will see that he's a Norwegian playwright. There he is, Henrik Ibsen. It's a badass beard. I love it. Might have to try and steal that style myself. Phenomenal. And he's Norwegian, right? So this play, I guess you could say, was taking place in Norway, but it's been translated. So really, they don't specifically set the setting in a country or a state or a province or anything like that. It's supposed to be pretty universal. It's supposed to appeal to all of us. But one theme or motif rather that comes up over and over again is money, and it comes up in different ways, right? It comes up in terms of debt. It comes up in terms of someone in the play, a character making a dramatic life choice because they feel that their lack of money forces them to choose one person over another. It comes up in the form of you could say our main character, Nora, making a pretty dramatic life decision around how she's going to help support her husband and her family, even though she knows that it could, ruin her at the end of the day. So this is a motif that you want to explore in terms of freedom. How does freedom and money, how are they connected? How do they work together or conflict with one another inside of this play? Another motif you could explore is marriage or love, right? They're not the same thing. So really it's I'm talking about two different things here just represented by one image. But how does love and freedom match up? How do marriage and freedom match up? Again, I probably should actually have two different images because I'm not saying that they're the same thing. They present themselves in different ways inside of this play, right? How does love affect a couple of characters in this play? When we think about, and in fact, you could talk about more than one character, right? If we think about the doctor, if we think about Christine, if we think about even Torvald and Nora, you really could almost think about any character in this play and think about how they've been impacted by love, but specifically how love has either bolstered, increased, or opposite, limited or decreased their freedom, right? And you could also think about that in terms of marriage specifically, which is different than love. They might be related and you might relate them, but you could talk about marriage as its own institution, right? How does marriage limit people's freedom in this, as presented in this play? Or how does it promote people's freedom? It's up to you to tell me that, right? Another theme you could look at for sure are gender norms. So norms around being a male or female. This is obviously, or I shouldn't say obviously, but right now in the society that you live in Canada in 2017, this is a major theme, major relevant hot topic, right? Gender norms are constantly changing. We now have a very different definition and understanding of gender itself than we did before, of gender identity, right? We have a whole new concepts of gender coming into play, right? When Ibsen's writing this play, there's no discussion about trans and transgender people. There's no such, it's not that there wasn't such a thing, but it's that no one even recognized it or knew what to call it. I'm not bringing that in to say that's what you should be writing about, but I'm saying I'm only trying to point out to you guys that from the time Ibsen wrote this to now, this is always something, gender and gender norms, how we view gender, that is a very, very significant uh, kind of piece of what it means to be a human being. And so it's something that pops up in literature all the time. And here in this play, it absolutely is tied to the theme of freedom, right? How does being a male or female in the world of a doll's house promote or limit one's freedom? That's something that you could potentially be examining as well. Okay, these are not the only three motifs. Money, debt, or four, I should say: marriage, love, and gender norms. These are not the only four you can examine. There are more themes than this present in the play, but I would say that these are four very strong themes or motifs. I keep using those words interchangeably, just in case you hear me say motif and you don't know what I'm referring to. Again, as often is the case, there's more than one definition for the word. This is the one that we care about: a distinctive feature or dominant idea in an artistic or literary composition. It's not quite as strong as a theme, right? Freedom might be the theme in Ibsen's A Doll's House, but then various motifs are going to promote that theme or connect to that theme, right? So you can also have themes intermingling, right? It's very rare that a piece of work would have one theme. So you could say that Ibsen's work has more than one, but in this case, we're examining the theme of freedom specifically. Okay. At this point, again, I'm going to shut up. Normally in my regular day school classes, I don't like to talk this much, but e-learning is a very different animal. You guys aren't as inclined to jump in, and we don't have as many of you. So at this point, I'm going to take a look at our list. We still have most of our people here. Do you guys have any questions about today's assignment and the stuff I'm talking about now? And we'll switch back to our other view here. Anything? No more questions? 10 seconds and then we're going to sign out. I'm losing people, so I'm guessing that there are no more questions. Okay. Any questions about anything else? From Carlos, John, Samantha, or Vanessa? All right. Cool. All right, so you guys get to work. I'm available by email for the rest of the day. I should be available for an Adobe Connect session later on, though that depends on when my wife and baby fly back into the lovely province of Ontario. They're in British Columbia right now, and I need to pick them up from the airport, and flights are